So, I would like to take you to look at a subject I find very interesting, which is narcissism. And the reason I find it interesting is because it's so contrasting to what most people seem to think about it, and also because, to me, it's somewhat of a key that unlocks a lot of understanding about culture and ego, the being that you are, the way that you function, and the way that perspective colors so much, if not everything, of what you see. And to look at things in a different light really facilitates flowing through life a lot better than trying to convince yourself that something's going on which isn't at all going on. Now, I have to be careful not to rush this one, as there is a lot I want to talk about. I love this subject. It's all about me, right? As all things that I create are. So I want to take it slow, again, for you and for me, and make sure I don't jump to conclusions, because I can always create another movie, but if I make it a rush job, there really isn't anything there for anyone. Now, as usual, the usual disclaimers apply, which means that I don't know anything, and this is all complete and utter bullshit. It's just talking. There's no value, there's no truth. It's just, at best, pointing at something. But pointing at something that causes you to look within and see something for you to go to work on. This has no value at all. It can only start something that will create something of value within yourself. And in order to do that, you have to take this, break this, and remake this, right? You have to tear it apart, destroy it so you can create it for yourself. I don't know anything. This is all general blah blah. And you are a very specific person. So please do not think I know anything about you, me, or whatever. I would say that the best place to start looking at narcissism is the myth of Narcissisticus? Question mark? I don't know his name. Maybe I should have looked it up before I got started. I think it was a book by Neil Postman, Technology or something, I don't know, which instructed me on the way people can look at the myth of, let's just call him Narcissisticus, and see something completely wrong. And I think that's the interesting thing about narcissism, is that it has two different ways to approach it, and that is exactly the problem of narcissism, and also the solution. You see, the myth of Narcissisticus is that he is a beautiful young man who lives in a world where there are no mirrors, and I think he's riding his horse, and for whatever reason the horse is scared, let's call it by a snake, right? It's a myth, there should be snakes. The horse is startled, jumps, or how do you say this, gets on his hind feet, legs, and Narcissus is thrown off his horse and falls to the ground where there is a puddle. And as he lays there looking around, he sees the puddle and is mesmerized by what he sees in the puddle. And he is so mesmerized that he's actually unable to move anymore, and just stares at what he sees reflected in the puddle. And I don't know if he dies of hunger or whatever, but at least it takes up a lot of his time. And the way I understood it, as Neil explained it, is that people seem to think that he was mesmerized by himself, right? He looked in the puddle, saw his reflection, and thought, geez, I'm such a beautiful man. Let me keep looking at it, because I didn't know I was so beautiful. I knew I was handsome in a way, but, right? And that's what we think of narcissists. People that are very obsessed with themselves, right? That are thinking they are better than others, they are the greatest thing ever to come across the planet, or whatever. Which, of course, they are, for them. The other way to look at it, and I think it was in the idea of why we are so mesmerized with technology that Neil caught up this myth, is that, or the way he, I think, said it was, the true explanation of this myth is that yes, Narcissus was mesmerized by what he saw and kept staring into the puddle thinking, what is this beautiful image that I'm looking at? But without realizing it was himself, right? And that is very important. Because to be mesmerized by something you do not know as yourself is way different than being mesmerized by looking at yourself, right? You could say we live in an age of the selfie, and you could also say that that is somewhat of the bad mesmerization, right? We are just so happy with ourselves that we want to take pictures of ourselves, post them on social media, and have others wallow with us in the beauty that we are. Now, the thing Neil was looking at was technology, and I think it was a very, very nice insight that he offered, where he said, you could say that that is exactly what we're doing with technology, right? We're looking for ourselves in technology, not realizing every time we create a new piece of technology that we're really recreating ourselves. And the beauty with the creation that you do instead of the puddle that you happen to look in is that you have some sort of deliberateness in it. So what we tend to do is to filter out what we like to think of as the bad parts of being a human, right? I think the robot is a very nice example. I think artificial intelligence is the perfect example where we are recreating ourselves without the flaws, right? And of course this is a misunderstanding, as our flaws aren't flaws at all. They're part of what makes us what we are. And this will probably turn out in the future where the grotesque one-sidedness of the perfection becomes imperfection itself, meaning logic, right? Artificial intelligence is pure logic. What if you had a computer that would not have the emotions but look at logic purely from a logical standpoint? Which is impossible because logic is not real. It's infused with feeling. And to have pure logic will turn out to be pure destruction, pure illogic, right? The thing cannot be. But I'm drifting away to another subject which could deserve a movie all on its own, and I'm sorry to leave you hanging there, but let's get back to where we want to go, because I have a timer and I want to address some things that I think are interesting to address for now. Okay, so what I wanted to explain with Neil is that there's two ways of looking at the myth. The one perspective is to see Narcissus look at the reflection in the puddle and say, he just thinks he's really beautiful. And the other way to look at it is to say, whatever he's seeing he thinks is very beautiful, but he does not realize it is himself. And I would say that that explanation is the most accurate in explaining how humans work. I would even go so far as to say that we are pure narcissists. Narcissism is what creates the propulsion within us. Why do we want to live? Why does the heart beat? Why does the body breathe? Why does the brain think? Why do we act and move? It is pure and simple because we are in love with ourselves. We think, rightfully so, for ourselves, that we are the coolest thing, the most unique thing to ever come across on this planet, to ever have been born. And I would even go so far to say that if you were to not think that, you would probably commit suicide. Although I would even pose there that the suicide is more out of the frustration and the arrogance that people do not recognize your uniqueness. So you feel you deserve a podium, but you do not seem to get it externally, which makes sense if you live with all narcissists, because why would one narcissist grant the other the podium? So I think there's very few people who truly, on the deepest level, are convinced they are not the gift to this world that some people seem to have no problem claiming that they are. And that's where it becomes interesting, because when we talk about narcissists in the cultural perspective, right, because you could say that there's narcissists on the being level or the ego, and there's the narcissist on the cultural level, or the pointing at someone and calling him a narcissist, or even someone claiming to be a narcissist. I mean, I don't really have a problem with it, thinking or realizing that we are narcissists in essence. It's what makes this thing tick. Why do we have any motivation? Why do we have any propulsion? Well, because we think we have a right to, right? We are arrogant by nature. We are narcissistic by nature. We claim space. We claim oxygen. We claim food. We drop our filth in nature without a problem. Do you understand? We take up our space because we apparently think we are allowed to, we can. There's something that tells us we have a right, an entitlement, right? The problem in this whole thing is when things become grotesque. So what happens is, if I am correct and you are narcissistic by nature, you also happen to live in a culture that has created this term, the narcissist, and labeled it bad. You are not supposed to be a narcissist. So there is a conflict. You want to be an egoistic, selfish person, and the culture says, but you may not. You must be a loving person. You must share. You must have empathy for other people. And I'm not saying all of these things shouldn't happen. Hopefully we'll get to the point today or another day where you realize there's levels, and the approach is what determines where you are, not the action, because the action could be on different levels and have different meanings depending on what level they are approached from. So if you are narcissistic by nature and the culture tells you narcissists are bad, we have a problem. So let's take a look at what this narcissist is in the culture point of view, right? The culture says the narcissist is someone who is so happy or who is so convinced that he is the greatest thing, or she, I think it's a more male thing than female thing, but I don't know, that it actually spills over out of him, right? That's what I sometimes tell people, that we're all narcissists. Some people are just worse at hiding it, right? If you allow the culture to influence you and turn you into a actor or an imposter or a pretender, then you might come away with acting, or you might convince other people that you're very caring, right? People that I talk to sometimes are taken aback when I say, of course, I'm a complete narcissist. They're like, how could this be? You're a friendly guy, you seem to help people, blah, 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 blah. And I try to explain that, apart from this story, which I sometimes share and sometimes I don't, the helping of others is very selfish. Because I'm either helping them because it gives me the feeling of being able to help, and helping someone naturally places them, or places you above them as you are in the position to help them, right? Here, have $1. I have $1 that I can give to you, and you are obviously in need of this $1, so I will give you my $1, right? After I stole it somewhere. Or it's, let me help you explain, right? This whole interaction. I'm explaining something to you that you do not know, and I'm helping you to get to a place where you can help yourself. Of course, it's because I think, or I know that I am in the place where I can do this, right? That's why I keep telling you to destroy me, because I have nothing for you. Right? Anyway, we've been there. So, we're all narcissists, but the culture has made it somewhere has made it something where there's this area that if you enter into acting like this, you are a narcissist, right? Maybe in the past we would say narcissism is a very specific thing that only certain people have. I think we're moving to the part where we're understanding, well, we all have narcissistic tendencies, of course, but if you have, like, there are 7 pointers to recognize the narcissist, and if someone has 4 of those in an extreme way, then he is a real narcissist, and you are just a normal person who comes up or who stands up for his own wishes and desires, right? So we have made this narcissist somewhat of a gray area, where if someone behaves a certain way, yes, he is a narcissist. And we have tips and tricks on how to recognize the narcissist or how to deal with the narcissist, right? So this narcissist has become something that is outside of us. He is a narcissist. I'm not. I'm a nice person, right? It's the moral thing again. It's the judging. I am better than he is, right? I am better than the narcissist, which isn't narcissistic at all. Me claiming to be better than the narcissist. Well, what does that make you? So, is there a point to anything I'm saying here? Am I going anywhere? Am I just rambling? Yes, to all of them. I think the first point to make is that I would say narcissism is what we are by nature. And it's not a bad thing, it's not a good thing, it's just what's in the ego, right? An ego, you could say, is a bad thing that needs to be repressed, right? Ego is the enemy. Well, you could do that, but it's not going to make things easier for you. It's just going to make you battle it out for the rest of your life. Because now you have this thing inside of you that apparently wants center stage, but oh no, he shouldn't, right? Then there's culture, which is saying, of course, ego is the enemy, and so narcissistic behavior is the enemy, which doesn't allow for you to show things that could be taken as narcissistic, right? I think it's one of the quickest ways to separate yourself from the group is to be a narcissist or to be labeled a narcissist. To have behavior that is labeled narcissistic is a surefire way to get thrown out of the group quickly. And it's interesting because the reason that this is done is because people cannot deal with narcissists, right? And I'm not saying, right, it's both. They can completely not deal with narcissists. They cannot deal with themselves, and the person who shows this narcissistic behavior, they cannot deal with mentally, and they cannot deal with him in reality, right? He is taking up space, and in cases more space than he rightfully should, because he doesn't understand this just as much as they don't understand this. So he's taking up space and getting away with it, right? They're not fighting him because they're afraid to deal with the narcissist. So the only way to deal with that person is to destroy him behind his back, right? So he must be a narcissist, and then we can sit and huddle in a corner and say, this guy is such a narcissist, how dare he? How could he be so grotesquely mistaken about what he can or cannot do? And of course, in a way, this is very correct. This narcissist person who is showing this behavior has no respect for you, has no respect for his fellow group members. He has already placed himself outside of the group, so for you to do so is just confirming what he already knew. He is way better than you, and you do not deserve his respect because you cannot deal with him. And he knows this. So he can say things as a way of testing. And as long as no one opposes his sayings, his claims, then they must be true. So it's a very interesting dynamic, this labeling of narcissistic behavior and calling someone a narcissist at a point, because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the reason people throw out the narcissist, or at least they usually don't, because in business, where there is this master and slave dynamic going on, this micromanagement dynamic, it's of course the psychopaths and the narcissists that rule the whole thing, right? If it's all quantified into money, then everything is just a number, and every person is a number that can be tweaked, right? We're turning the whole world into a logistic thing. Every process, every company, it's all logistics. There is no quality there, and of course this isn't true, so we have the returning to the craftsman, we have the returning to the restaurant that is like a house, or the bar that is more like a house where there's intimacy and openness and some sort of feeling that isn't correct. There's illogic there. But of course in the business world, and especially the corporate world, logic rules, right? That's why we're creating the algorithms and the artificial intelligence and the robots, because they are the perfect executor of logic. Of course, the whole disruption isn't about logic at all. Self-disruption isn't, and the disruption of companies isn't, or of segments in business, because it's all about taking away profits where there is margin in order to stay ahead of the margins being taken away. Now we have this situation, and I'm sorry I'm taking this side route, but it's interesting to me. We had this situation where companies were so long in charge that they had to be disrupted because someone had to take away that margin that they had, or do the innovation that they refused to do. And we're now slowly moving into the area where if you do not disrupt yourself, you're going to be in trouble. So if you have your beautiful little balance sheet and you see you're making a lot of money in a certain area, you better think how to take that margin and marginalize it. Because if you think you can keep making that money there, it's going to be taken away. And the same thing goes with humans, right? If you think you have an edge, if you think there is some area where you know something someone else doesn't, or where you have a skill that someone else doesn't, and you can build your identity on that edge, it's going to be taken away. And if it's not going to be taken away by the other person, it's going to be taken away by yourself. Because the fix it gives the addiction machine, which is the brain and the apothecary within it, is going to lose its sensitivity. So being better than 10 of your coworkers is nice at first, but it's not going to keep doing it for you. So you need to work at a bigger company. You need to work at a company where there's smarter people to reconfirm to yourself that you're in fact better than them as well. Because you're the greatest thing to ever walk this earth. So of course you're better. Now this is going on and you're so happy with yourself and the company's making all the money. And every time they make more money it's because of you. And every time they lose money it's because of them. Right? That you're either going to close yourself off to development because you need to stay fixed in this situation, which is going to lose, or it's going to how do I minimize the fix that this gives you, which will cause either depression, because you're so impressed by yourself you will get depression, you need to be depressed, or it will lead to a more narcissistic way of acting, it has to be bigger, right? Until you're sitting around waiting for Google to call you and say, hey, we have a job for you because you are the greatest thing ever. And we are the biggest, best company with the smartest people, so we need to have you work for us. Right? It's just a matter of time until they call you. But what if they don't? What if Google's not interested in narcissists? In pure, or not pure narcissists, actually artificial narcissists, right? The people that build themselves up to levels that become dysfunctional, because that is the point, right? The narcissist's function is a balancing, just like everything else. But if you make the narcissist function the content of itself, so the only point of being a narcissist is to confirm to yourself you are rightfully so a narcissist, then it becomes dysfunctional. Because where at first the narcissistic function offers propulsion, right? How dare you think you can be better? Well, because I am. Well, that's great. Show us. He is. Look at it. He's selfish in a very strategic way, so he's helping others because it makes him feel good. That is good for the group, right? Until it turns into, I need to get my narcissistic fix, so I'm just going to dominate my group members, which will make them scowl and, how do you say this? Squirm and run away in fear and anger. That in fact this whole thing is becoming dysfunctional because now the company that I work for isn't profiting from my narcissistic behavior. It's actually becoming a problem within the company because I'm using the company not as the ends how do you say it? Not as the goal of my, how do I say this correctly? My actions are no longer to make the company better and use the outcome of the betterness of the company to reflect my own greatness. No, everything in the company is now used for reflection of my greatness. So even if we have a bad outcome, I can still walk away on top. I can still walk away saying, well, look at these losers. It wasn't me that messed up, it was them, because I'm so great. If only they would have listened. If only they would have done what I said. If only this, that, or the other thing. And so, what I have found is that you need to embrace the propulsion that's within you. And you need to not fight it, right? You need to let go of this idea that to be selfish is a bad thing. But you also need to be open to the situation where you are not alone, right? You are in yourself, living in yourself, and in a way completely alone. But there's something going on within where that is taking place. Do you understand what I'm saying? You are not living in isolation, you are living in a world, and whatever reality lies behind that, I do not know. But I do know there's feedback, there's reflection, there's interaction. And I also have found that there are ways to play or manipulate or to interact with that have better effects than other ways of dealing with that. And the moment you take yourself as the center and have that be the content of your functioning, things start to work against you, right? If you know you are beautiful and all you need, because you apparently doubt it, is the reflection of that beauty, people do not enjoy your beauty because it is a forced thing. It's forced upon them. Look at my beauty. And realize this need for confirmation is complete uncertainty, right? If you believe the ego is the enemy, then you are now dependent on culture because you need them to tell you what is correct. And if you are dependent on culture, then you have no inside authority anymore. So you cannot be a relaxed narcissist. You cannot be a narcissist that knows itself to be the best thing. And if you know yourself to be the best thing, why bother impressing others? Why bother making them feel your dominance? If you're already there, what's the point? So the need for confirmation confirms the uncertainty that lives within. And this is exactly what is going on, of course. The true narcissist is very afraid that he will be denied his grandness. And so his whole acting is infused with this need. And it's such a strong need that his acting, his words, his emotions are so grand, so overwhelming, so aggressive, so dominant, that normal people are overwhelmed by it and do not see any way to confront this overwhelming. So they actually end up reflecting back confirmation to the narcissist, because he's saying, I'm so good, I'm so strong, I'm so powerful, no one can deal with this. And what do you know? He's right, no one can. And so the real way to deal with the narcissist, so to say, with the labeled narcissist that has become dysfunctional, is to stand your ground and to stay calm and keep your logic close, because logic in this regard will always prevail. Because if you stay concentrated, or so to say, if you keep looking at the long game, the narcissist isn't helping himself at all. But it's very difficult if you do not understand what's going on. It's very difficult if you are still very uncertain within yourself about what you are And what's going on here? What is this place? Where does authority lie? Is this the real world and did I come into it? Or is I the real thing and is the world come into that? And if I keep talking long enough, you will label me crazy, of course, which is fine. So this narcissist, or this narcissism, is a very interesting subject for you to take a look at. Especially if you are ready to be open and honest about what drives you and who you think you are. And I think it is the biggest threat that someone can start pulling to have this thing unravel in a very positive way. And I think it's very good if companies were to address this in their organization, in the culture, to be open about how this works and how it could work and how you could serve both the company and yourself in a very positive way, right? You could say that ants are the most narcissistic beings I can think of, the biggest selfish, no, they're not so big, the most selfish animals in the planet, because they have no ego, so to say, right? They have externalized the ego, or they have externalized, they have internalized themselves into the group as being, right? The ant and the anthill are one thing. And this is just projection. I don't know what an ant thinks. I don't know how it works. But you could say that the ant that sacrifices himself is the most selfish ant of all. Because if he were to understand the long game and think about what actions and reactions and implications come when he starts sacrificing himself, he's actually enlarging, or how do you say it? He's increasing the survival chance of other ants, which in fact means he's increasing his own survival chances. So to sacrifice yourself is not selfish in the way that you are now the hero and people will have little ant pictures of this was the ant that made the bridge that helped us cross to the new land, so he is a hero. No, he is the hero in the way that by doing this, the anthill has the greater chance of surviving. And since he is not himself but all ants, he himself has a bigger chance of surviving. So he's completely selfish. But it's a way of looking at it that people find difficult to do, especially because of this war between ego and culture, right? Alright, I think for now this is enough. I hope I wasn't too giddy in explaining this whole thing and it makes sense. And if you think I'm a huge narcissist, then of course you're right. But if you think I am in a way that repulses you, then at least we now know where we stand with each other. If you enjoyed this, if you have questions, I would love to come back to this subject. So let me know. And good luck with it.